Investments in the securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Hello, Ayesha Tariq. How are you? Good morning here.
Fine, thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Ayesha, it's such a lovely day to interact with you about macros. There is so much happening in the macro world today.
Indeed, today and every day, honestly, from the moment I started, it feels like there's always something happening in the markets, which keeps things interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. So, Aisha, this face to face will be all about macro and trying to build a 10,000 feet view on how to look at the global macro. And then we will try to go into that important topic of US election and how it impacts the markets there. And then I will try to derive some inference for Indian market as well out of this discussion. So I'm very excited and looking forward to this discussion. But in this video, I want to talk about you first, knowing about your journey, how you started, why you are doing what you are doing right now, everything. Please share candidly.
Sure. So I started out as a banker, as most people do start out. I actually never wanted to be a banker. I did a double major in marketing,
Okay.
and I wanted to join something like Unilever or, Procter and Gamble. But as luck would have it, I managed to land a job in Standard Chartered. At that time, it was one of the most celebrated programs in Standard Chartered, where they took you to Singapore and Malaysia and all these places. And that's the place I got in. It's not that that attracted me, but the fact that I got in. And so I got in. It was a job, right? Um, but then I realized that there was so much to learn in the banking field. I joined and they put me in corporate banking. I started learning about companies and I started studying how companies grow from small companies to larger companies to the largest companies. And it helped me understand industries as well, how different industries function, going to factories, see how things are made. And after a while, I just fell in love with the job. Not the number crunching part of it, but definitely the stories part of the job, and that's why I always like to say there's always a story behind the numbers.
Yeah.
And since then, I mean, I spent over 10 years with Standard Chartered. I moved to the UAE with them. And since then, I've always had this idea that the numbers don't tell you the whole story. And you need to link the story with the numbers,
Mm.
right? And so I continued my journey as a banker, and then I moved on to actually one of my clients poached me, and I moved on to being his head of treasury here in the local market in the UAE.
Okay.
It was a large local company. He had a lot of investments in real estate, fantastic gentleman, extremely intelligent, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And it was absolutely wonderful working for him. We had a portfolio of over $1 billion in real estate, hospitality, and listed and private equity. So the whole spectrum of things. So that was, again, a very, very interesting role. We were acquiring companies, we were acquiring assets. So a lot of due diligence work, a lot of interesting stories, again, to tell there. So that was great for a while, but then, I was burning out a little bit as well, and I wanted to take a little bit of a break from all of that, spend some more time with my family, with my daughter. So I quit that job and I started my own consulting company, and that was just before the pandemic. So things started to get really tough during the pandemic, but you know what happens? You're at home, you're working, or at least trying to work. And then I started to go on social media. For the first time, I actually had a bit of time to go on social media. And I started, tweeting on Twitter. Um, I started posting charts, interesting things. There was a lot I learned in all those years. So I started to share some of my knowledge. I thought maybe it might be interesting to people. And I started writing a newsletter every weekend. From that, something happened, Life just changed and took a different course. I met some people on Twitter We started a company primarily helping people trade. But then I realized that all this while, the study of companies and the study of industries, it's great. The fundamental analysis, it's important, it's great, it's still what moves markets, it matters. But then I also realized that there's a different way of looking at it. And that way would be to look at the 10,000 feet view, as you said. So instead of distilling from bottom up, as we call it, I felt like maybe we should switch things up and look at things from top down.
Yeah.
And, interestingly, I think at that point in time with COVID and with the different fiscal actions, also government spending actions and all of that, plus, the central banks now started to play a part. Because after the great financial crisis, central banks cut rates and they pumped in cash, whatever. And then there was a long period of time when their function, I wouldn't say didn't matter, but they didn't have so much to do, let's say,
Yeah.
right? But now suddenly we're in a position where central banks have suddenly become super important, right? So for example, I don't think, like, I would miss Fed meetings, press conferences. Now I listen to the Fed press conference, I listen to the ECB, I listen to the RBI, I listen to, Bank of Japan, translated version or whatever I can get. But suddenly all of this became very important in COVID, and I actually felt like this way of looking at it, looking at the macro first, and then looking at the bits and pieces below it, was a very interesting way. And the best thing is none of this excludes the other. Right? So you have the macro, and the macro moves in a cycle. And as you said, it's a very broad view, right? And it moves in a very slow cycle.
Yeah.
So sometimes some things matter immediately. Like, for example, what we saw in the markets on Friday, one jobs report came out in the US and everybody reacted.
Yeah.
So you might see an immediate reaction in the market, but the impact, let's say, is much slower as we go.
Yeah.
And it's not a substitute for trading, and it's not a substitute for fundamentals, right? I think the best balance is when you marry all three of them and try to incorporate all of them in your view in trying to understand the markets or trying to trade the markets. So the macro will always be like an overlay, and having some understanding of what's happening can help you shape your view. It may not help you trade on a day-to-day basis, but it can give you a general idea of where things may be going, right? And it can help you sort of build your portfolio accordingly, in the sense that you want to rotate in certain times to certain sectors, to certain factors, right? And so macro can help you with that overview. Sorry, I know you asked me about my journey, but I got very passionate talking about
one of the reasons
macro.
why we connected with you, because we saw the passion while you were tutored so much, and we thought that you're the best person to take a deep understanding of macro and learn more from you. But it's great. I currently you stay in Middle East, right? That's what you said.
That's right.
Okay.
I live in Dubai. Yes.
Okay. And you are literally a neighbor. Your native place is Bangladesh.
Yes.
So good to have connection with you, because we are just not very far away. I'm in Calcutta. Your native is Bangladesh, so we're not very far away.
So we speak the same language as well.
Yes, we can make an attempt while we record this video. No, just kidding. Great, Ayesha, good to know you, and really looking forward to our next video where we go very deep dive into the topic, and you have made a brilliant presentation for us. I'm looking forward to that in detail. Thank you.
Thank you.